Okay, hello, you guys. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome in those who are tuning in for the very first time. So this might be one of the most controversial Tucker Carlson interviews that I have seen in a while. And mind you, like I said to you guys before, I do watch a lot of different podcasts, especially because I drive a lot. And this one definitely had me on the edge of my seat when I was driving. I was actually listening to this when I was driving to where we were going to spend the weekend for my recent family getaway that I attended, that I went to. And there was a lot of different things that were said. And like I said before, this is one of the most controversial Tucker Carlson interviews that I've seen in a while. And it's not because of what people think that he said. But for me, it's because of what he's actually trying to say underneath all the noise. So today we're going to be talking about a few different things. I have my notes queued up here. I have a few timestamps ready to go. But overall, we're going to be breaking down basically Tucker Carlson questioning power and media narratives, his comments on Charlie Kirk's death, freedom of speech. I guess we're going to be looking into a little bit of how he addresses the Nick Fuentes interview, but mostly pinpointing signal versus noise argument there, and then whether outrage and culture is distracting people from the larger issue, from everyday Americans. This is not me defending anyone. I just want to put this out here. I'm here to give my general opinion, but this is more so to just have a discussion around influence, media, politics a little bit, and public attention. And I think it's just very important that we kind of add more of a different perspective into the conversation as we get into it. So you guys will get my personal view on it. I'm obviously going to be very objective to this and not try to be too biased, but just basically pinpointing out what I think people should be taking away from each and every part of this interview. So without further ado, before we get into today's topic, do remember to subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, do like the video, and do comment below if you guys saw the Tucker Carlson interview. And if you did, mention what really stood out to you. But with that being said, let's get into today's interview. Okay, so I'm so excited for this one. I've actually spent a decent amount of time. I'm basically just stuck in the house because it's raining. As you guys can see, I pinned up my hair. I just came back home from running some errands that I had to do. So anyway, yeah, so I figured let's get into this interview. I think there was a lot of things that said, and we're going to start off pretty spicy. So the first thing we're going to be addressing is Trump, his comments on Trump and the discussion around the Antichrist and what I think is genuinely important. So we're going to hear a little bit from him then, and I think that's going to be the foundation of how I'm going to structure this video. We're going to just listen into the clip, and then I'm going to give my general thoughts and feedback around this as we go along. So without further ado, let's get this started.
Come back to this moment for you, which is there's the political case against Trump that you make. But I do want to ask you about the moral case that you've been making as well. And that's a word that you've used. You know, in that monologue responding to Trump's Easter post, you said that Trump's comments were evil. And I just want to understand that a little bit better. Do you think only his comments are evil, or does the evil extend to Trump himself? Is he evil?
I just want to be really clear that there's a lot of evil in me and in every person. So I just don't want to, and I've certainly experienced it in myself, and I've seen it in all people. You know, we're all capable of evil. So I want to pull back on the judgment and be very precise about what I was saying, which is you cannot mock other people's gods.
Okay, before we get into the rest of what he's saying, just to add a little bit of context. So they're about to get into the entire thing where Trump posted a photo that a lot of people interpreted as him posing to be Jesus Christ. Trump later on says, allegedly, excuse me, I want to make sure I use allegedly and reported, all that good stuff, because I don't want any issues or any problems. But this was allegedly what people were thinking from the video, from the photo. Trump later on, it's reported that he addressed the photo and he's meant to portray himself as a doctor healing the sick, not as Jesus Christ. So that was, obviously, like, I didn't do a reaction to that, to Trump actually saying or doing that stuff. It was pretty, like, I could see how it goes. I could see how, like, people would interpret that. Obviously, I'm a Christian. We don't play those games. He obviously addressed it based off what was said. But I think one thing I want to highlight before we continue about what Tucker Carlson is saying, I think it's really important that we do our best not to judge and criticize. I mean, it's in the Bible, judge, do not judge, or however you judge, you will be judged based. I'm obviously butchering the verse. Let me see if I can find it here. So yeah, from Matthew 7:1, it says, "Judge not, be judged." So basically, like, don't judge other people because you will be judged. Basically, just advising people about being hypocritical. I think overall, I think that was a good thing on his part. I'm completely unbiased. I think it's just really important that we kind of, like, reflect on ourselves. That we're all sinful. We're all corrupt. Obviously, from what happened from the very beginning. If you're into Christianity, if you're into religion, but also just as a regular human being, we're flawed. We're flawed in so many ways. We do things that we may not probably would do again, or will reflective about and be repentant of, excuse me, or know that we could win about certain things a bit better. So I think that was a good acknowledgement on his part to, like, correct that, because obviously we don't want to be judged, and the biggest judger of all comes at the end of death. So I think it's just really important to highlight that. But let us continue with this interview.
Gods, and put yourself in their place. Period. That is a deal killer for me. That's worse than the war with Iran, in my opinion.
Yeah. But I ask because, you've been talking on your show about whether Trump is the Antichrist.
I have not said that.
On your show, the day after Easter, you noted he did not put his hand on the Bible during his swearing-in ceremony as president. You said, and I'm quoting, maybe he didn't put his hand on the Bible because he affirmatively rejects what's inside that book. And then on a recent show, you went further saying, here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist?
I actually did not say, could this be the Antichrist? Here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist? Well, who knows? I don't.
Can I get a quick pause there? I know there was a lot of different reactions that I seen on online regarding this, and I actually saw the interview before all that stuff came out. I actually saw it, like, when it actually published, because again, I was driving. But anyway, I saw it, like, I think I saw, like, 2 hours after it was published. I saw it. But anyway, I think, for one, I think a lot of people are, like, giving him a really, like, hard time because, obviously he was caught red-handed, saying, like, hey, I never said that, and then here's a video of you saying those exact words. I think it's a tough spot to be in, but I think, going back to what we said in the beginning, do not judge people. I don't know if this was a forgetful moment for him. I'm not sure if it was intentional, unintentional. From what I'm getting at, and obviously, I could be susceptible to people's manipulations or lies, but I do think that he probably did forget, just because I think he's just really outspoken in general with the things that he says. But I do think that later on, as you guys are going to see, that he kind of, like, circles back on that idea. Maybe he took some time to think about it. Maybe after it was published and he saw feedback, maybe he realized he was out of line in certain ways. I'm not really sure. I know that overall it could just be embarrassing for any person that doubles down and saying, I didn't say that, and then there's a video proving that they did. I think it's, it is what it is. I hope that he does just speak out to that, but I think that he does a good job, at least with the interview, of kind of like doubling back on that comment. But let's get into what he says, and then we'll wrap up with my general thoughts on the matter.
I don't know where that comes from, but I know that those words never left my lips because I'm not sure I fully understand what the Antichrist is. If there's just one, I actually tried to understand it. I may have said some are asking that. I'm not weighing in on that because I don't understand it. Just to be totally
No, in
clear.
Revelations, obviously, the Antichrist is named in different
Yeah,
ways.
not just Revelation, but throughout the New Testament, there are references and in the prophets as well. So, but no, I'm not speculating about that. I know that people are speculating about that, but I would say it's enough to acknowledge that Trump, like many leaders through history, is putting himself above God. But even on a more terrestrial level, like to send out a picture of yourself as Jesus has got to be a red line for Christians. How could it not be? It has to be. And I wish that Christians would speak up when he attacks Allah, when he mocks the faith of Muslims.
So to be clear, though, that was not what you were suggesting.
If I thought Trump was the Antichrist, I would just say so. If I understood what the Antichrist is, I would say so. And I don't really. I mean, I guess literally it's...
Because you've been discussing it repeatedly on your show, so I'm just trying to understand why.
What I've tried to
what do you want your audience to sort of
I want my audience
considering?
to see...
So before we get into what he wants his audience to know, I just want to highlight a few things here that he said, just from my general notes about the red line for Christians, about what that image means, and like the idolatry around public figures, just kind of like putting themselves above God. I think that was a very important thing to highlight specifically for Christians. Like, God should not be mocked, Jesus should not be mocked. There's actually a verse in the Bible that talks about that I think that people should take into account. Let me see if I can find that exact verse. Yeah, Galatians 6:7 is literally just says God should not be mocked. Be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. I think that's a very powerful verse, and I think that's something to take into consideration to any person who puts themselves within that limelight, or for any person who tries to mock God. I'm not saying that's what Trump was trying to do. I'm just saying that if that was the original intent, try to double back, or whether if even unconsciously. I think sometimes out of our ignorance, out of our lack of understanding, out of our lack of self-awareness, that sometimes we get so caught up within ourselves that we don't really realize how other people will perceive things. And perception is important. I understand that intent is very important. The intention you had behind it is important, but perception is important. And I think that's just a very powerful thing to keep in mind. I'll get into what the Antichrist, general conceptions of the Antichrist, but let's get into Tucker Carlson's wrapping up with this part of the clip that I wanted to highlight to you guys.
My audience to see what's happening now in terms beyond just material. Obviously, the commodity flow through the Strait of Hormuz is, essential to the global economy. Got it. But I also think there is a world beyond our senses. Every culture and civilization has understood that from the beginning of time, and we're in this weird anomalous moment where we've been trained not to think that, but it's real. And this is a realization that's dawning on me. I mean, I wasn't thinking like this at all until several years ago. So I don't want to pretend that I'm a shaman or anything like that. I just want to make the point repeatedly, again and again and again, that there are unseen forces that act. There is a spiritual realm, and we are subject to those forces for good and bad. And I don't think that any person can deny that.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think that especially people as Christians should understand. And for those who may not be Christians or who may not have a faith, I think it's important to at least take what he said into consideration. Like, why from the beginning of time, from recorded history, that people hinted to there being a greater power among us, or spiritual worlds, or something within those lines. I think it's very important to at least sit back and ask those questions, even from a curious perspective, because I think it'll give you at least a starting foundation of the realities of this world. But one thing I wanted to make very clear, and just my general comments is, I think it was really important that he kind of doubled back, whether intentionally, not intentionally, whether trying to show hide face or not, about making that kind of comment about someone being the Antichrist, because we do not know. I think when the time comes, we probably will know. And I think, like he said, it's really hard to define in general terms what the Antichrist actually is. But the best definition that I was able to find, just general, without identifying anyone, is just that the Antichrist is a figure, spirit, or entity in the Christian theology that opposes Jesus Christ, acting as a false, deceptive substitute for him before the second coming. So essentially, that is what the Antichrist is. And I think it's just like, you even can add to that, whether if it's a specific person, whether if it's general influence. I think it's just overall just an evil, deceptive power that's supposed to come into play before the second coming of the Christ. And even though we're not here and it's not Bible study, I think it's really important for people to understand like why making such a claim like that is kind of like, could be viewed a bit horrendous and a bit excessive. But I do think that overall, it was a moment for him. But I think it's important to know that, to also be mindful of making these public figures as your God, or as something. Like, they're regular people just like me and you. At the end of the day, they have the same 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, neck, all that good stuff that we have. So it's important not to idolize them. I think this is one of those internet conversations that grow because people attach symbolism to powerful public figures. Obviously, like I said, the Antichrist is meant to generally is understood to be a deceptive, influential opposition to Christ, and Christian theology. And I think that distinction is important, to understand that we shouldn't idolize people, but at the same time not say that people are the Antichrist, especially because we do not know. And I think that overall, like, it was good that it was addressed. I think that at the end of the day, that photo obviously did cause a lot of offense to people, but I think him highlighting on what he wants the takeaway for people to be is like saying like, hey, you need to respect my religion. You need to respect, you shouldn't be disrespecting anyone's religion. And, to his comment on, respecting Muslim religion, Christian religion, I think overall people's First Amendment should be respected. I mean, we're in the United States, and I think it's something that we should just be mindful of. I don't want to spend too much time harping on that. I know there was just a lot of general reactions about him just being in a gotcha moment. And I think, at the end of the day, it's undeniable that it was a gotcha moment. I think that, he tried his best to recover from that. Whether if it's doubling back, whether if it's, just blatantly, obviously, like, we can't lie that he was just get caught up in a lie, whether intentional or unintentional, we don't know. But again, I'm happy that he kind of doubled back on that, because we really do not know. And there's a lot of people that would argue that the administration or Trump, and debating if they have, if, the Antichrist is a part of that, and allegedly, I'm speaking allegedly, if the Antichrist is, within the administration, or that they're prepping for them. I know a lot of people have those fears and those scares. At the end of the day, I think the best thing that people could do is, one, pray; two, do what you can by speaking to your local congressman about things that you are not happy about, making sure that you are of service to your local community. And that if you can, voicing your opinion and voicing your thoughts, and if you can't, at least voting accordingly to what is important for you. And I'm not here to give my general opinion on specifically with anything with politics. I'm just here to like kind of highlight the importance of why his comment on Trump being the Antichrist was so egregious. And then also just highlighting, one, don't idolize these public figures. And then last but not least, just being mindful of other people's religion and being respectful of it. Because, intention is important. And even though you may not intend to offend someone, perception is just as important as well. But moving on to the second part of this. So I wanted to get into his Charlie Kirk comment. Actually, before we get into the Charlie Kirk comment, I wanted to just brushly pass by his view on freedom of speech. I think it's kind of really important, and I'm gonna just start it from right here.
Because look, the
specific
second
things that
the second you say that
place.
criticism is the same as a threat or words or violence, then of course it's very easy to arrest people, as they are arrested in Great Britain. They've had hundreds of people arrested in Great Britain for criticizing Israel. I don't know why any liberal-minded, and I'm in that group, liberal-minded, you have a right to your views, I have a right to mine. I don't know why any liberal-minded person will go along with this and not say, whoa, this is totally bonkers, and this is the road to totalitarianism. And I would say that about any topic.
Yeah, so obviously if you guys don't know, I was born in America. I am a natural born citizen. And the topic of freedom of speech, especially nowadays, has been, for some reason, very sensitive. Specifically in the U.S., who has that specific right in our Constitution. It's the First Amendment. I think what he says here, and just give you guys some backstory, I think the conversation was just understanding, what's an like what kind of speeches would be considered a crime. And I think his general position, from what I'm understanding to this video, is that you shouldn't criminalize people's views and their thoughts and their form of expression, because it's not a crime and it's protected under the First Amendment. And as an American, a natural born citizen, I think that's very important. You may not like what people say, for sure. But I don't think that you should throw people in jail for the things that they say. Obviously, I grew up in a different era. Like, one, people weren't as sensitive as they are now, but two, threats were taken seriously, but not to the point where you're going to be thrown in jail for it. There was a such thing as, like, mean what you say and be mindful of what you say, because someone might hold you to it, or you're going to have to defend it. And I think that that's important. You could defend it, you can contest it, you can criticize it, you can pull it apart. But to put it a crime based off someone's personal perception, I think it's very important. I think that, yes, be mindful of what you're saying, because there could be genuine consequences to the things that you're saying. If you are threatening someone, if you are, inviting violence, I think that, expect people's reaction to be according to what you are saying. And that threat should be taken seriously. But I don't think that if you have a different view on something, especially if it's not causing the harm of anyone, that you should face any criminal. The criminal outcome should be like you should go to jail or something like that. I think that especially because of how I grew up, that's really nonsensical. Believe me, I grew up in a time where you say the wrong things to the wrong person, you might get your teeth knocked in, for sure. But no one was calling the cops and putting you in jail, or no one was actually like stalking you in order to put you in jail, try to get you in jail just because you have different views. People have different views growing up all the time. And it was just never something that we even thought about. It was just like, okay, that person's crazy, or I'm going by my life. That had nothing to do with me. That's on them. They gotta live with that kind of thing. I think that's a lost kind of art, the art of just ignoring people, especially when they say crazy things. And there's no backing to it. Obviously, like I said, if it's a legitimate threat, and especially if that person has shown that they could carry out that threat, take it very seriously, and question it. But don't throw someone solely off the basis of them saying something that you don't like or something that you don't agree with. I think that's important, because I think there's a lot of noise around like what hate speech is, and all that stuff. And I can't even tell you and then define most of these terms, but I just think this is really important to decipher the difference, and most importantly, respect our First Amendment. Respect everyone's First Amendment, especially if you're an American. That should be something that, not only that you encourage, but that without question, just be like, hey, this isn't our amendment, this is our Constitution, this is something that we shouldn't even like be debating. Obviously hold people to the furthest extent of the law if they did something wrong. but don't, obviously our First Amendment clearly says you cannot, create laws that would threaten people's freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of, freedom of religion, and everything that comes with it. So I just think that's really important. But let's move forward into his comment on Charlie Kirk. Obviously, Tucker Carlson was very close to Charlie Kirk, and there's been a lot of different thoughts and opinions and debates and everything with Charlie Kirk. But I think how his comment towards Charlie Kirk's death and the circumstances and how people are overall reacting to it, I think that his reaction and what he said was very diplomatic. His response, that's a better word. His response was very diplomatic and grounded. But I'll give my comments after we listen in. So here it goes.
I want to stay, though, with how some of this is playing out, because as you mentioned, you were very close to Charlie Kirk before he was killed. And he started Turning Point USA, which is this very influential group among young people on the right. And you're now seeing some on the right who are questioning whether Israel had a hand in Charlie Kirk's murder. And I should say the theories that Israel was linked to Charlie's death were denied by Israel. There's been no proof of that at all. And crucially, this theory has been condemned by Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow. Do you still have a relationship with Turning Point USA?
Well, I have always loved Erica Kirk. And I met her when she was dating Charlie and thought so much of her. I know a lot of people at Turning Point. I was the headliner for a bunch of different Turning Point events. I haven't been asked to do it this year. Don't know if I will be. Never said a word against Turning Point. I think it's been I was their headliner for a bunch of years, so obviously I supported it. I would hate to see it hijacked by its donors to become an oracle of neoconservatism. I think it'd be pretty hard to do because its members are not for that. Young people are not for that. People of draft age are especially not for that.
I mean, when was the last time you spoke to Erica Kirk?
I couldn't agree more. We said at the end about young people are just not for certain things. I just want to take a quick pause, separate things because I don't want to get copyrighted, but I want you guys to get a full general gist before I give my thoughts on his comment regarding Charlie Kirk. So let's continue.
Kirk.
A couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
By text. So my concern, and this is not about Erica Kirk or Andrew Colvett or any of those people with whom I've never had a crossword and hope never to have a crossword. But my concern more broadly is about the investigation into Charlie's murder, which was short-circuited by the FBI. And I'd like to know why. And I don't care to be screamed at for asking that question. It's a legitimate question, and we know that. I know that for a bunch of reasons. But the public knows it because Joe Kent said it out loud and explained it. He's the head of the National Counterterrorism Center. He's an ODNI. And he was told by the FBI that he could not investigate it. And as a friend of Charlie's, I'm not going to be intimidated into saying the following, which is, on what grounds would you do that? I'm not saying the guy who's been arrested didn't pull the trigger. There's been no trial.
He was obviously handed over by his father.
Do we know that? I don't know what I know because there hasn't been a trial yet. And again, it's like so many things. And it's not just Israel. It's not just Charlie Kirk. It's the existence of NATO or the way the economy is structured. Why is capital taxed at half the rate of labor? Like, that's a question that bothers me. In every case, shut up, socialist, racist, conspiracy theorist. It's like, I'm just too old for that. Why don't you answer the question? That's my job.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause there. Overall, I don't have much to say to that because I think a lot of people just on the internet just kind of take Charlie, and whether if it's legitimate, whether they're trying to find out the truth or not. But I just think there's just a lot of general opinions and stuff like that. But I think Tucker Carlson's comment was very measured. And I think it's important that we just emphasize on due process, emphasize on wanting facts, emphasize on, the reaction to emotional loss. There's so many people that were impacted from a very large scale on his death. And even though I did not follow Charlie Kirk or, really listen in on him, to say that I didn't know him is 100% incorrect. He was a very massive figure. And obviously we can see that not just by the things that by the reaction of his death, but just based off the things that he has done. I think a lot of people have, including myself, have taken a closer look into the things that he was talking about. But even before then, there were millions and millions of people, especially young men, that looked up to him. But regardless of politics, when someone dies violently, people naturally want answers. And I think that, I think that's not only fair, I think that's right. I think, overall, like, what I liked about Tucker Carlson's response is that all the attacks that are coming from, I guess, his wife, going to his wife, going to his company, going to the people who lead that, and the questions that are being had, he didn't really emphasize if they're legitimate or not. And I'm going to say allegedly here, just based off of the alleged responses and the things that people are saying about them. I think why I find his response so measured was because he focused on the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is that there's a lot of questions that don't have answers to them. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of headlines, there's a lot of narratives, there's a lot of opinions caught up within this death that left people, with more questions than answers. And we don't have the facts. And I think it's important that for justice towards this person, towards Charlie Kirk, that we emphasize on due process and truly try to find and give him a fair investigation of who did this and why. I didn't personally hear Tucker Carlson calling for like retaliation or chaos. What I did hear though was just like the frustration and grief of losing a friend. So then, just I think as someone who is very distant from the situation, hasn't really given their opinion on it. And I won't be giving my general opinion on, what I think right now, but I think that was a very measured approach. And the important thing that we can take away and that we should emphasize is the importance of investigation, the importance of facts over speculation, and then the danger of the online escalation. I think having that perspective at least keeps things grounded and balanced. And ultimately, I'm not saying that the people who are trying to fight for answers online are not important. I think those people do play a role there. So I think that, doing what you can based off of like what you feel in your heart is important. But for the people out there that are utilizing this, whether if it's to like make money or not, whether people are trying to cover up certain things, I just think it's important that, we just try to have a soul for the fact that the only person that is affected is the person who is no longer here, Charlie, and the people who could possibly be in danger. Because if there are people out there that are targeting high-profile public figures because of their views, I think that's something that we should all voice and say that's just not okay. But rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. God bless him. And it's just very, 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 very unfortunate what happened to him. But moving forward into that and kind of like emphasizing on social media a little bit, we're gonna get into Tucker Carlson kind of addressing the Nick Fuentes interview. And even though I'm not sitting here trying to like really emphasize on Nick Fuentes, I really don't know much about him. I've heard of him before. I don't really watch pretty much any of his content. I think you see clips of him all the time, but or at least on X, here and there. But I think that the broader conversation and the underlining thing that we should be addressing is the signal versus noise part. But I want to introduce how this conversation kind of comes about first with him addressing the Nick Fuentes interview. So let's go to that.
Hating Jews because they're Jews, I'm opposed. Told him that to his face. Lots of people decided that I should have taken a different tone. Okay, do your own interview with Fuentes if you want. That's okay with me. But I guess what I've come to believe, I didn't feel it was a significant interview, especially on any level, except the extent it was used to try and make me into a Nazi, which, again, I'm not. I would admit it. But what I think is interesting is is the kind of moral scheme that interview revealed, which not surprisingly is childish and kind of repulsive. And by moral scheme, I mean like what the people in charge, including in journalism, think is right and wrong. So I think anyone who calls for the murder of innocents or justifies them is the lowest possible person. There's nothing worse than that, than killing kids. And you take someone like Randy Fine or Ted Cruz.
Representative from Florida.
Yeah, Mike
Senator
Huckabee.
in
Right.
Texas.
These are all, I don't know Fine, but I know the other two very well and have for many years. And both of them have just...
Okay, I'm going to stop right there just to give you guys some context. So for those of you who may not know, and I know I should have done an introduction to this before, but essentially, Nick Fuentes is a public figure in the space. He's a commenter, I think that's the word for it, on, different types of topics, whether cultural, whether political, and things just around that nature. And then who he just spoke of, Ted Cruz, he is the senator for Texas, and he's been a senator since 2013. I just wanted to give some context as to like where things are going, so I could just lay the foundation, so you guys have a better understanding, especially those who do not keep up in politics or do not keep up with conservative media, know who they are. So later on, when the point of contention happens, a little spicy back and forth that this interviewer has with Tucker Carlson, you guys have a better understanding of his viewpoint. And again, I'm not here to defend it. I'm just here to try to give you guys a full picture view of what is being said. So let's get back into it.
And both of them have just been like, no, we should go kill people and their kids, and they make excuses for that. Like, there's nothing worse than that. And yet, those are the only controversial part of those interviews from the perspective of others in journalism is that I was too mean. I was too tough. I was too tough on Mike Huckabee, who's a sitting U.S. ambassador, or Ted Cruz, who's a...
I don't think that was the concern.
Okay, but the point is...
I think when you just compare them...
who do you think is more morally repulsive? Ted Cruz or
Who
Nick
do you
Fuentes?
think is more morally repulsive?
Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a sitting U.S. senator who has called for the killing of people who did nothing wrong, whole populations who advocated for this war. Nick Fuentes is like a kid. He's like 26 or 70. He has no power except his words. Here you have a public official who we pay, who has actual power, who's voting for things, who's making policy decisions. And those decisions would include, in fact, they are focused on the murder of people who did nothing wrong. And yet no one thinks it's a big deal. Well, it's just totally fine. I mean, if there's tape of Nick Fuentes saying we should kill people because we hate their parents, or it's okay to kill children, I would love to see the tape, because that's disgusting. And that's basically what the entire U.S. Senate does every single day, and no one notices. Nick Fuentes said something naughty that I disagreed with. He made fun of things that I don't think I would never make fun of them.
He's a white nationalist who's denied the Holocaust. And what I will say,
okay, but is that worse than killing kids?
From my understanding of my own, I was just in Germany recently, and it was such a good reminder that the Holocaust didn't start with the gassing of Jews. It started with the dehumanization of Jews. It was language that was used. And again, that is what it concerns people.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why when you have a U.S. senator, a member of Congress, a U.S. ambassador waving away civilian deaths as if they don't matter, that's the language of genocide, which results, and this is the lesson of the Holocaust, in genocide itself. And it has.
Just gotta pause there because that was a little spicy. That was interesting. A lot could be said there for sure. But let me just stick to my notes that I have here. I think truly, basically, Tucker Carlson's trying to break down the argument of senators, ambassadors, major political figures, and policymakers, and the power that they hold is legislative powers, military influence, funding authority, geopolitical powers, while people like Nick Fuentes whole controversial and he's a controversial internet personality at the end of the day. And though they may have an audience, they may influence an audience, they don't have institutional power. And I think that's fair. I'm not sitting here and arguing what he said about like his viewpoint on Nick Fuentes, but I do think that it is really important that we highlight that there is a very big difference between someone chatting on the internet like myself versus someone whose job it is to who has legislative power, because they can actually get stuff done, especially within the grounds of what they're of their state or their country, or what they're doing. And just to give you guys some context, Mike Huckabee, he's the U.S. ambassador for Israel. So he represents the U.S. in Israel, and then Ted Cruz is the senator um, for Texas, like I mentioned before. And though I do understand the perspective that the interviewer, her name is Lulu Garcia, I cannot pronounce her last name, Navarro, I think it is. If it wasn't, I do apologize. I think what she's just trying to say is that words do matter. And I think that goes without saying. Words do matter, and the dehumanization of people does matter and should be looked at. And I think Tucker Carlson is just obviously trying to emphasize, yes, it does matter, especially when coming from political figures, coming from people who have the power of legislation on their hands. And I think ultimately they're saying the same thing, and she doesn't dispute that at all. Like when you go into the rest of the interview, I'm not going to be going through the whole entire interview, but I would do suggest people to go watch it. I just wanted to have that be the basis of the signal versus noise conversation that I'm trying to get into. I'm going to fast forward. He does speak about JD Vance, and maybe I could play a quick clip here before I get into the signal versus noise portion. He does speak about JD Vance, and a lot of people on the internet have been reacting to this as well, but because he clearly dodged that question, he even said, "I'm dodging the question." I know some of you guys may want to hear it, so let's just play it real quick. 1 second.
Your relationship with the vice president, because you were one of the people credited with getting him into that role. You were close to him. You advocated for him. Are you still close to Vance, considering your rupture with the president?
I mean, I will always love JD Vance as a man. I think, and I'm making this judgment on the basis of his public statements over many years, I think he's in a tough spot. He's in a tough spot. I mean, he's on the record repeatedly saying this is exactly the thing that this administration would avoid doing, and now they've done it.
President Trump was also on the record saying similarly.
As I've said many times, exactly. And by the way, I wouldn't characterize it as a rupture with Trump. He betrayed his promises to me and everybody else, and I acknowledge that in public. So it doesn't make me the person who breached the contract. He's the one who breached the contract, to be clear. But it puts the vice president in a super difficult spot. And I know him well and think so much of him as a person. And it is my guess that based on his past behavior, that he's doing everything he can to mitigate what he sees as the ill effects of this. And but it's kind of hard to call the shots when you're vice president because that's not in the Constitution. So no, I would never. I put him in a bad situation just by my public. He was attacked endlessly for my Nick Fuentes interview. Whoa, so scary. And okay, so I've always felt bad about that. He didn't do anything. You know what I mean? But I was used as a cudgel to beat him over the head because the neocons hated him because they thought that if he ever became president, he would be less compliant than the president turned out to be. So, I don't want to add to that at all. I think he's a really good man. I know he's a good man because I know him very well. But, I don't have anything else to say to anyone in the administration because I can't affect
don't talk to him anymore?
Any outcome.
When was the last time you spoke to the vice president?
All right, so let me pause there before, because she's asked him if she talks to him, and this is where the dodginess comes from. Just to give you guys some context, I have not seen the Tucker Carlson Nick Fuentes interview. I've seen glimpses of it, so I don't really know what was said all the way, and how that impacted JD Vance. So I don't have much to say towards that. Um, I think that he's just basically explaining his position in general when it comes to JD and the relationship that they have, let alone what the position he thinks JD is currently in. And then that kind of like frames her to ask him, basically if he still communicates with JD, and then you kind of see him kind of dodge the question, which we'll play right now real quick.
When was the last time you spoke to the vice president?
Oh, I don't know, but I don't want to add to his problems at all. But I would just say what's obvious is that I'm hardly an advisor to this administration. And I think it's also clear that Donald Trump makes these decisions.
You really don't know the last time you spoke to Vice President J.D. Vance? Weeks, months, days?
I don't know. I mean, I would never characterize that. I don't want to cause him more problems. I would just say I'm not advising. No one's seeking my counsel. I'm not trying to influence anything. I gave it my best shot. Didn't work.
Well, let me ask you this. Vance was not in favor of the war, but he ultimately didn't seem willing to die on the Hill. I mean, he could resign. He could, there's many things he could have done, I suppose. Do you wish he'd been more forceful?
You know, I will just say, I'll just be totally blunt about what I'm doing, which is taking a pass on your question and say that I know JD very, very well. And I think it's like super tough situation. He's in my prayers. I mean that. And I just don't want to add to what is clearly a really hard job.
I know that if you were in my position, you'd press.
Oh, go crazy. But I'm.
Yeah. So just wanted to give you guys, give people what they want, because there's a lot of comments surrounding that. I respect that position. Like, he's just being honest. I am curious to know, just because I didn't even know, to be very, very honest with you guys and transparent. I'm very, very new into this space. I spent majority of my years working in corporate America for the company that I was with for a very, very long time. So I didn't actually listen to a lot of things on media, a lot of things in politics, a lot of things surrounding culture, and a lot of the conversations that circle around online, and even these personalities. Like, I just didn't have the time. Like, I honestly would work to nonstop, be up at 4 or 5 a.m. responding to Slack messages, or responding to emails, in general, reviewing metrics early in the morning, all the way up until sometimes even 10, 11, even 12 a.m. There was a time where I literally was up for 48 hours straight, just getting stuff done. So essentially, I just didn't have the time, and the time where I did have for leisure, I did not want to be listening to politics. I wanted to be spending time with my family. So I'm very new to this space. So I just wanted to preface you guys with that, because I was not aware that Tucker Carlson and JD Vance had a relationship. I was not even aware until a few months ago of kind of like, you hear about them all the time. People at work maybe comment towards them. But I didn't know what they represent, their views, their political views, what they talked about, just because I was not in this space. But now, being more into YouTube and the things that just generally interest me is about history, is about global global issues, global business, real estate. Obviously, of course, you guys know I love my movies. I love culture. So a lot of these things, like, I'm just versing myself into now. So I think overall, what I'm trying to get at with that mouthful of me trying to explain myself is that I didn't even know that they had a relationship. So for me, like, I just took it as, you can tell, Tucker was intentionally avoiding, obviously he said it. He's like, I'm just doing a hard pass on this. But essentially, I am curious. I'm curious to hear more, as as anyone would be, especially because I didn't even know they had a relationship. And knowing that they do have a relationship, I'm curious to know, why he. I think it's clear why he decided to take a pass. He was just like, hey, I believe something happened in the Nick Fuentes interview that he did that caused problems for JD, and he's just not trying to rehash them, or to make things worse, given, like he said, JD being in a tough spot. I don't know enough about it, but as we go along, guys, I'm gonna inform myself more. There's only but so much things you can research, and even though I am coming into this space, I'm not migrating, putting full hours and stuff, because I do have things to do outside of these things, and I'm going to be educating myself and looking into things deeper and deeper as we go along. So do give me some grace. I still have things and business items and family obligations and personal obligations that I need to attend to. But I'm sorry to have much on that part, but I did want to end with something very critical and very important, and it's the conversation of the signal versus noise. So we're going to move a little bit ahead, because I really want to emphasize on this matter.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think this whole thing, it's not even JD specific. This whole thing is like dooming anyone connected to it for the foreseeable future, including the entire Republican Party. And, if you're psyched for President Gavin Newsom, I guess that's a good thing. I'm not. So I think it's a disaster. It's a true disaster. And again, I told Trump this like 10 times, like, this is going to blow up your legacy. All this gold you put in here, like, they're going to take it down and mock you as they do. Like, this is going to blow up you're concerned about your legacy. You're 80 in June. Like, I get it. But this is not the way. And I think that's proven true.
So you think this will doom JD Vance as well?
I don't know, doom. I mean, I'm obviously not good at calling the future, but I couldn't be more, I couldn't be a bigger fan of him as a man, but I think anybody connected to this is going to have a hard time explaining it, because how is this good for the United States? It's not.
One more question on this particular issue. It was just published that your son, who worked for the VP, left that job. Did your rift with Trump have anything to do with that and make it hard for him?
Zero. He was not forced out of the role at all. And my understanding of it is, let me just say, in a normal world, in a decent world, my son or my son's job would have no relevance at all to me.
Why did your son leave then?
I just want to pause right there. I forgot about that point. I forgot to add it to my notes, but I think it's just general opinion about where he's about to go with his son, about like how his son's career doesn't have any relevance to him. In a perfect world, I think that'd be more ideal, but I think a lot of people do compare, unfortunately, like your mother to daughter, or son to father, or child to parent, a lot, or vice versa. And it's a lot of pressure put on the child. I think overall, people just have like a natural born curiosity to like, what do your parents think? What does your child think? Which is, and that sometimes can cause unnecessary anxiety, and sometimes put unnecessary pressure on the individual, whether the child or the parent. But ideally, that's just not the world we live in, because naturally, especially like if your parent is a prominent public figure, people, that comes with its own pressure, but obviously people add on to that. And whether if it's asking about your parent or asking about your child, I think it's just not, especially when it comes to things that are unfavorable, like they're talking about his son leaving, is just not the most ideal thing. But let's continue.
And if he wasn't forced out,
I don't know. You can ask him, but he was there over a year. Like, I don't know. White House is an intense place to work. I don't want to talk about my son. He's got nothing to do with this. No, but that's kind of the point. Like, we need to defend the core beliefs of our civilization, which, by the way, are attractive to the entire world. People move here not just for our robust economy, but because they want to be judged on the basis of what they did, not on what their parents did. That's the whole point. That's collective punishment. It's blood guilt, and we reject it. I gave this lecture to Nick Fuentes. I gave this lecture to Mike Huckabee. The lecture never changes because the idea is the core idea of our civilization.
I 100% agree with that. I really wish that that can be the reality. I really do. And I think maybe it is something definitely worth fighting for. I think there's a lot of major things that are happening that take priority, but I think it's really important. I think that we should be judged off the things that we do. Essentially, you can't control another person. You can a parent, as much as they raise and have responsibility over a child, once that child becomes a certain age, there's nothing you can do. And whether that especially like as an adult, if I did right or wrong, I should be judged based off that. And I should have my own opinion and my own thoughts. I think obviously here he was definitely like avoiding the question for what reason we do not know. But I think at the same time he was just trying to respect his son's individual sovereignty, and if he had insight on it, if he didn't, we wouldn't know. He didn't want to answer. But I think overall, like that's really important. Like if his son made a decision to leave, if he was forced out, I think that it like he should have the opportunity to answer to that, and not have your parent who may not know the full situation answer to that. Because even though we inform our parents and our parents may know about what goes on in our lives, the details are not always said out loud. And I would be the first person to say that is pretty true, because there's certain things that I don't tell my mom, or there's certain things that I don't share with my family to protect them, but also to keep my sovereignty and being able to make decisions. I think I do go to them when I genuinely need advice, or when I genuinely need to vent, or when I genuinely feel like I genuinely need them to know something. But I am very mindful of what I share in general with everyone, because sometimes you just want to keep certain things to yourself. Sometimes it's a private matter between you and that individual person, you and that individual situation. And maybe you're still figuring things out. I know I'm the first person to be like, my sister and my mom are definitely more involved with my life than anyone else, naturally, because I trust them more. I trust their judgment. They have my best interest at heart, and they're very supportive. But even with them, I'm very selective of what I say and when I say things, because I don't want to burden them. But then also, I don't want things to be taken out of context. But we've been going on for a little bit. I wanted to skip ahead a little bit and get into what I'm trying to get at, which is signal versus noise. I know we've been waiting, highly anticipated, but let's watch.
Since you mentioned Nick Fuentes, I have one last question. You opened the door.
I don't care about Nick Fuentes.
He is not a J.D. Vance fan. He's called him a race traitor because of his marriage to Osha.
I don't care. He's like
who is Indian American. Wait, let me finish the question. I mean, given how influential Fuentes is right now.
Is he?
Is he not?
I don't know. Doesn't seem to be. He didn't get us into war with Iran. Like, who cares, actually?
Well, I'm gonna pause right there before we get into the rest. I know I'm dragging you guys along, but honestly, that was a little crazy to me, right? Most people may not have this view, and I don't know enough about Nick Fuentes to really comment on it. So I'm gonna say allegedly here. Allegedly, that's what he said. Allegedly, that was his viewpoint. One thing I will say with Tucker Carlson, I think that was his strategic way of like kind of downplaying the situation. But I understand why he does that, because later on we go into the signal versus noise. So I get it, and I understand it, and I think it was a good way to segue into like what's actually important. But to say he's not influential is like I've even heard of him, and I don't listen to him. I see him all the time. Not all the time, excuse me, but I see him here and there. I think if I'm picturing this the right person, I think that's who he is. But for specifically, I'm not here to I don't know what he stands for, so I'm very hesitant to comment on that. But if that alleged that he said that JD Vance marriage is problematic, that's wild. That's a very wild comment, especially for someone like me. I'm a love enthusiast. I'm a helpless romantic. So how people find love and how people decide to get married, I just naturally just gravitate towards, and I love to hear about it. To hear about the opposite of someone kind of being like, well, your marriage is the problem, blah blah blah, and people, I guess, making him out to be I guess whatever, is crazy to me. I don't know. I know that JD Vance, I believe his wife is Indian or something. I don't know, but I think that's crazy to say. I think love is independent of someone's politics, especially if that person overall, from a theological, idealistical perspective, he is not, he's married to a woman of a different nationality. I don't personally see the wrong in it. at all. I don't even know if that's true, but I think that was a very wild comment. And I just wanted to stop there to grasp for some air, but let's continue.
Actually, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, all of this is like a sideshow. Americans are being killed in a foreign country at the behest of another foreign country, and it's going to wreck the US dollar and cause hyperinflation in our country. And we're like fretting about what some kid on the internet said. It's like, who cares, actually?
But
this is a way of taking us away from the core issues, which are economic. They're economic. And that is the one thing that nobody ever wants to talk about. How is the money distributed? Where does the money come from? No one wants to, that's why, like, the only left-wing movement I ever had a lot of sympathy for was the one that arose after the global financial crisis. Occupy Wall Street. I didn't.
Let's pause right there, because I don't think a lot of people know what Occupy Wall Street is. And after that, I'm going to close out with my ending comments here. But this is where he starts to get into the signal versus noise conversation, and I think it's really important. I think a lot this is the underlining thing that goes under the radar, and I think it's just really important for people to open their eyes and realize that. But just to give you guys some context about what Occupy Wall Street is, it was a leftist wing, left-wing populist and progressive movement against economic inequality, capitalism, corporate greed, big finance, and the influence of money in politics. And I think what he's saying about the bigger picture, about being like the real problem, if it being economical, uh, is with me without question. I mean, I think I can speak for every American right now that with all these changes in the cost of living is a little bit unbearable, even for the people who do well, and have substantial money saved. I think they're even feeling the pressures, whether it's at the gas pump, whether it's at the grocery store, just in general, or feeling the changes, whether if it's upper middle class or lower middle class or low income. I think everyone can say that right now the opportunity is definitely economic. And the crazy part is, it's not just on like a national scale. It's not just from the US, it's globally. Everyone's affected by it. But I don't want to get too deep into that. I just wanted to kind of highlight the signal versus noise, and that this is the starting of what he's trying to speak about, but also just give you guys some context of what like Occupy Wall Street is, for those who may not know. But let's continue.
I didn't know exactly what they were about, but I was like, yeah, we should be mad at the banks because like they did this and no one got punished. And within like 20 minutes, we're talking about black people and white people. It was like,
I'm happy to talk about economics, but your interview with Fuentes has 25 million views. But to say that it doesn't matter isn't, and
it matters in what sense? Like, does it matter more than?
But can I finish my question?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Given how influential he is, and I just don't think that there's any argument about that. I'm wondering how.
In what way?
I'm wondering how you think J.D. Vance could become the leader of the party after Trump if you have someone like Fuentes speaking so critically of him.
So I'm so glad you asked that question because its premise reveals everything.
All right, tell me. So
the premise of your question is that J.D. Vance can't.
No, I'm not saying that he can't.
It's going to be difficult for J.D. Vance to advance politically because
I'm asking, do you think?
Just the premise that it could be that J.D. Vance's interracial marriage is a bigger problem than his foreign policy views.
No, I didn't say that.
It doesn't.
No, I'm saying that there is a person who is incredibly influential in the party.
Is he incredibly influential? Like on what basis are you saying that?
Oh my goodness, there's lots of evidence, not only in the reach of what he talks about, but also.
Can you name a single member of Congress who's acknowledged his existence? Or
okay, let's pause there. I think this one's very funny, and things start heating up. But obviously, I want to break this apart because I don't want to get copyrighted. I don't want no problems with people. But this is where it was like the heat was turning up. Like we were turning up a notch. Now it's about to go like over the wind. And he's really about to like just break it down, do a twirl. I don't know. As to like what people should actually like be attentive to, and what's actually important, and then the comparison between, like I said, finally we're at the point where he's about to get into the signal versus noise with people, and I think what he said about like, oh, it's Nick Fuentes, excuse me guys, I have my hair pinned up. is Nick Fuentes influencers? He's like, how? I feel like that was kind of funny, but I understand what he's trying to get at. And I think he's just obviously comparing it to the greater institutions that govern our society day to day. But let's finish up with this before we give our closing thoughts and get into the real spiciness.
Or said, I did this because he told me to?
That's a groiper? I don't know that there's
there's not a single member of Congress who would ever stand up and say, or even show evidence of being influenced by Nick Fuentes, where they're out of 535, they're about 500 who are taking money from AIPAC.
I have already asked about the war's impact on Vance. This is a question about the future of the party, and the future of any party are its young people.
Sorry, I know I paused a little bit late, but when he said hold on, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, okay. She was like, I just wanted to make a little joke there, lighten up the mood, because this is a very deep conversation. Very deep, very spicy. But him saying, like, him in the middle of talking and her about to cut him off, he's like, hold up. That's so, like, that reminds me of, like, my brothers and my, just like the men that I grew up with. Like, hold up. You're not about to talk when I'm talking. But we can continue. That was just funny. That was just comical to me. Don't mind me. Let's continue.
And in the same way that Turning Point USA has influence on young conservatives, so does Nick Fuentes. And so,
I guess I don't know how we're measuring that, but
what I'm trying, all I'm trying to ask you here is if you but listen, there is
what I'm trying to
a strain in the Republican Party, especially among young people who are racist, who talk about J.D. Vance and his marriage in a particular way. And I'm asking you, and you can decide not to answer it, but I'm simply asking you.
I'm trying to answer it.
If you think that is going to be a problem for J.D. Vance leading the party.
Before we get into what Tucker Carlson has to say, I'm just like holding it in because it's so funny the noises that he's making. He's just like he's just holding his tongue and he's doing his best. shout out to him for having some kind of restraint there. But just kind of following what she's saying, I guess I've just been like living under a rock or just very oblivious, or maybe I'm just not exposed to that side of the internet. I don't know. And to be honest, I don't want to know. But if there's genuinely people out there that, one, are still racist, it's crazy. Because I can't tell you a single person. I probably only experienced racism one time in my entire life. And it was with a woman. She was an older woman and I was like a young teenage girl. And when I say like those, like my friends, white, black, Indian, Asian, defended me like crazy, was crazy. And I think it wasn't even like her like being intentional about it. I think it was just like her natural reaction to something. I don't know. But to me, it's mind-boggling that still is going on. And the fact that like his marriage is like, this is the second time that she's mentioned it. So his marriage is really causing a problem with people. I really don't know what to say. It leaves me kind of like this is real or is this, or I mean, if she's saying it, so I'm assuming it's real. But I mean, I guess I'm just not exposed to that, and thankfully I'm not. But I just don't have that. I mean, I've worked and have friends and grew up with all different kinds of people. I mean, I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey. For those who who know anything about Montclair, is the most diversified city I've ever been in, and this is coming from someone, I'm not well traveled, but I've traveled enough to say like, we got everybody, every kind of every person that you can possibly imagine. And to me, like, because I lived in that kind of environment, I guess I'm not. That's where my lack of knowledge comes from. But my view was just like, hey, marry, you want to marry a white woman, a Indian woman, a black woman, a Spanish woman, a European, whatever the heart wants. I just say, just go like in the heart, because that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, if you marry, it's like you can tell. Low-key, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent. You can tell like when someone like is just marrying for circumstance, or someone's just marrying for someone for their money or for their status. because their relationship is so transactional. There's no depth to it. There's no emotion to it. And it's just like a tolerating feeling. Like, I'm tolerating being here. Like when you go to court, like, hey, this is an obligation. And the reason why I say, like, make the metaphor of like going to court is because, like, you're at court, you're like, I have to be here. I don't want to be here, but I have to be here because I have no other choice. And I think that's what people who don't marry for love kind of subject themselves to, an obligation instead of like an actual right, just like a positive right of love and marriage. And I'm not trying to judge people out there based off certain circumstances. I know that people come from different cultures. I know that people come from different circumstances. I know that people have different mindsets. But for me personally, and I'm gonna say alleged to all the things that I said before, because I don't know if any of this is true. Like I said, I don't know. But for me, it's important to marry someone that you actually like and importantly love, because that's what's going to get you through the years. And who wants to live their life in misery? I don't understand why isn't like Melania, she's not white. I don't know Melania's last name, but she's not white. So it's like, or an American. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she's a white European. I really don't know. I really can't tell you guys in head nor tail, but I know that people say that she's immigrant, allegedly. If she's not, I'm sorry. But I don't know. I just think when it comes to like people's relationships, if they're like a good person for society, they follow your genuine values, I don't think it matters. Like I have JD's a white man. I'm just gonna say, obviously, like him and marrying an Indian woman, I don't see the issue in it. I know I have white friends. I have white colleagues that, I mean, my old boss, for heaven's sake, I love him to death. There's this 2 bosses I had. Love them to death. Matter of fact, there's a few bosses that I had, but the recent 2 that I had, I'm not going to name their names. I don't know if they watch me at all. If they do, hi, guys. I miss you guys like crazy. They used to have me cracking up. But both 2 white men. Both white men, both tall, very handsome. One on the chubbier side. We're not gonna talk about. You already know who I'm talking about. We already know who I'm talking about. But he just, he was a bad influence. He tried to get me to snack and eat. Judge me for not eating. We're not gonna talk about. I'm not gonna say too much because I'm gonna give away what I'm talking about. But both 2 white men, very tall. Obviously they're my bosses. They make tons of money. White men, they're very handsome white men. One was married to a black woman, one was married to a white woman. And I wouldn't have known that until until deeper into our relationship, until like we've gained trust to start speaking about personal things. But when I mean like there were 2 sovereign men that were capable, smart, respectful, you can tell morally sound in general. Even though one believed in God, and I believe the other, he wasn't a believer, or at least he didn't follow the faith. If he grew up in the faith, I'm not sure. But just in general, like going based off of like how they treated me, how they respected me, working with them, like I was technically their finance partner. I say that they were my boss, but technically we were partners. They were technically my boss. I just consider them my boss because 1, they're older than me. 2, they taught me a lot. And even though like I was there to them and we operated as business partners, I always called them boss man, I'm trying to say, out of respect. But the fact that they're being older than me, more experienced, teaching me a lot, but at the same time, because I came into this space relatively young, and they took me under their wing and taught me a lot about the business, and I was able to just grow as a finance leader with them, and earn their respects as a partner. But that's neither here nor there. My point is that one person married white, one person married black, and I wouldn't have known because they were both upstanding gentlemen. And not only did they get the job done, they exceeded expectations, and they became better leaders, and they made me a better leader in the process. So I think that that's really weird. And I know I went off on a tangent, but let's finish this up. Let's wrap this up. Let's continue.
Because
let me answer your question.
Thank you.
You were unable to tell me how Fuentes was influential in any way other than the views on a video, which are probably lower than those on your average porn video. So that's like not a good measurement.
Scratch that from the record, guys. Scratch that from the record. Oh my goodness. I knew he was gonna say that, but I forgot he said that. Like, it hit me when he said it. I don't know this is another video, we're reacting to it. Sorry, viewer discretion. I should have put this in the video. Viewer discretion advised here. Let's continue. That was crazy. Not saying it's untrue, but it was crazy.
It's not meaningful. Does he have influence on our politics? I haven't seen any. So let's just start there. Second, J.D. Vance's problems with young people and old people and the party itself revolve around his views on foreign policy and economics, which are the issues that actually matter. Third, race is thrown up as a distraction so often, as in this case, to distract from what actually matters, because on questions of economic, let me just finish. On questions of economic, if I can finish, on the Fuentes himself is a distraction from the conversations that matter, because power is displayed through the structure of the economic system, globally and per country, and in the use of force. So it's the economic program and the foreign policy program are what matters in every government from the beginning of time. Those are the two questions on which there's a bipartisan consensus in Washington between Republicans and Democrats that we should do this thing. The public rejects that thing on both categories. They reject the economics that are a consensus choice in Washington, and they reject the foreign policy that's a consensus choice in Washington. And so Washington's response, Wall Street's response as well, is to be like, let's have a race war, and you guys can like argue over blacks or whites or whether JD is married to an Indian woman. Like, what? And so Fuentes is incredibly useful for people with actual power to divert the conversation to something that is both irrelevant and divisive, because it's a divide and conquer strategy. And my strong view, gained over 35 years of watching carefully and being involved, is that that's come to its end.
Okay.
And JD's real problems are his foreign policy views, the ones he's articulated for 10 years, are in direct opposition to the foreign policy views of the people who fund the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Same people. And they have the same views.
It's the idea of the uniparty.
Well, on these questions, it's totally true. We can argue about the trans thing. You can have legitimate views on race, legitimate views on trans. Those are real issues. I'm not saying they're not. But those are not the issues on which empires rise and fall. The real issues are economics and foreign policy. And on those issues, there's a bipartisan consensus. And so they throw up like, no, we're disagreeing on trans, we're disagreeing on affirmative action or whatever. But they agree on all that matters. And JD disagrees, as Trump did, at least in his public statements. So this is the wrong foreign policy course. This economic system is hurting young people. And so Fuentes shows up and everyone wants to talk about Fuentes because it's really safe. No one wants to talk about, why are capital gains taxes half those of taxes on regular income? Like, I think that's like a critical debate. You will never have that debate. Have you ever asked a question about that? No one ever asked that. And I think that's like, nothing's more important domestically than that, but whatever.
Just want to say, our YouTube overlords are, I don't got nothing to say on taxes. Like, just gonna leave it there. We're gonna leave it there. I think there was a lot of things a lot of good gems that were said here. We're not gonna digest and deep dive into all of them, but it's worthy of hearing. But overall, I think this is what I was trying to get at with you guys from the beginning, is the signal versus noise conversation. I think Tucker's larger point is just how the media cycles can fragment public attention about outrage cycles, division-driven engagement, algorithmic amplifications, emotional charge narratives. I think at the end of the day, what he's trying to understand is that that's all noise. And what the signal are the important things, like he said, economical and, force of power that those things are the noise, and that what the signal is, I think I said that correctly the first time, is, economic and, the power force at the end of the day. And his argument was essentially structured around sometimes those things becoming overshadowed by culture war distractions. instead of like really emphasizing what is going to affect everyone, regardless of where you stand with your cultural perspective. And I think that's really important. And it shouldn't be dismissed. What I was trying to get at with this video is just, better explaining what media literacy is, influence, power, public attention, emotional manipulation, and understanding who actually shapes policy. And, on biggest emphasis of the signal versus noise narrative. And, what you should take away at the end of the day are those things that I kind of highlighted on and the things that I commented on. And even though they weren't explicitly said, I think those were the underlining important things that people should take away from this. So whether you agree with Tucker Carlson or not, I think the bigger takeaways is just learning how to separate outrage from actual power. Knowing who controls power, knowing who controls money, knowing who controls media, narratives, and what conversations are constantly being pulling people's attention away from those real questions, which is economically and power by force of how that's actually affecting Americans, and not just Americans, but people around the world, because we're all feeling it. We're all feeling the economic strain, unfortunately. But hopefully things get better. I'm a very optimistic person by nature. One thing I just want to highlight, that doesn't mean every controversial person should be ignored, but it doesn't mean we should think critically about where energy and I think we should just think critically about where energy and attention goes ultimately, because I mean, do listen and do what matters to you. But I think overall, in those two main things that he ended with economics and power force, I think those things affect everyone, regardless of where you are geographically, the color of your skin, your personal preferences, your cultural preferences. I think that we all feel the heaviness of it. And even though I didn't get into like my personal views on the administration of JD Vance and a lot of overall things, that wasn't my goal for this video. My goal for this video was to just have a discussion around, using the Tucker Carlson interview around the bigger things of what actually matters, and just offering more of a balanced perspective, a more balanced and grounded perspective on these hot conversations and these hot topics and these outrageous trends that are coming out specifically around this interview. I think it's important to like kind of, not feed into the drama, not feed into the noise, but utilize the noise to bring people back into what's truly important. And I hope that you guys saw that and felt that kind of takeaway during this video. With that being said, that's all that I have for you guys regarding this video. I know I missed you guys last week, Friday and Sunday, because as you guys know, I was traveling with my family and I had such a wonderful time. So I have a special treat for you guys this week. I'm going to be doing a double feature this Wednesday and Friday to make up for last Friday and Sunday. So if you watch this one, stay tuned, because later on I'm going to be dropping a video. I'm going to be dropping a video reacting to what happened last night. Last night, Candace Owens did a live. I've never seen her do a live, and I'm still relatively new to her content, so please don't mind me if she has done it before. I'm sorry. I think she said in the video this was her first time. I'm not really sure, but she did a live, and even though I'm not going to be going through the entire thing, matter of fact, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts and opinions on certain things that she said in the live, so definitely stay tuned. I'm going to be dropping that video tonight, so after watching this one, go watch that one. I think you will enjoy it just as much, especially if you drop this one. But that's all I have for this video. Remember, do subscribe to the channel, do turn on your post notifications, do like the video, and comment below if there was something in the video that you agreed with, if there was something that you disagreed with. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know your opinion, your general thoughts. I know there's some people that watch me lurking. There are people who watch me recurringly and don't subscribe to the channel. It's hurtful. So please do subscribe, do support me so I can continue doing these videos, so I can grow and obviously give back to you guys, because there's a lot of things that I wish that I can do, but I can't right now because we're still in the growing phases right now. So hopefully, as we grow, as we carry along in this process, in this journey, there's a lot of different things that I can help and contribute to. Now, for those of you who do not know, if you do need more personalized guidance, I do offer one-on-one consultations. The information is in the description. do check out this video at the end of this video of more information for that. But that's all I have for today. So I see you guys in my next video, and do check out this the information for one-on-one personalized guidance, especially if you need it. I highly encourage it. The ones that I've done so far have been going swimmingly, and I actually have a few people who are booking me on a monthly basis. I only allow monthly, like reoccurring monthly instead of like weekly or daily, because there's only one me, and there's a lot of people that probably in the future, whether now or in the future in general, that want to engage. I want to keep my calendar open for new people, but I'm more than happy to have monthly reoccurring times for those of you who do take a lot of value out of these one-on-one consultations. So that's all I have for you guys. See you guys soon, and check out this video right here. Hi loves, if you've been wanting more personalized guidance, I'm so excited to be officially announcing that I'm going to be offering one-on-one virtual consultations. Whether if it's in real estate, financial direction, emotional intelligence, or just helping navigate through life, I'm here to help you think through it with clarity, intention, and confidence. I'm offering flexible sessions between 15, 30, 45 minutes, and even up to 1 hour, so you can choose what works best for you. If you'd like to book, you can use the link below or the information in the description. Just a quick note, this is general guidance based off of my professional experience in real estate, finance, and other life endeavors, and is not legal, financial, or licensed advice. So please make sure to review the terms before booking. And if this is your first time booking, there is a 10% off promotion available. Make sure to use the information below or the information in the description for the promotion code based off of your session length. I'm absolutely looking forward to connecting with you guys during these one-on-one sessions. Now let's get back to our regular scheduled programming.